Charlotte, North Carolina, November. The kind of cold that doesn't announce itself, just settles in, stays. A neighborhood on the east side of the city. Quiet streets. Porch lights on. Families behind windows moving through the last hour of their evenings like nothing in the world is wrong. One house, end of the block, every window lit warm, a car in the driveway, dark engine off, dark inside, a man behind the wheel. Not moving. Hands resting, not gripping, on the steering wheel. He has been sitting here for 22 minutes. He is not afraid, he is preparing. His breast pocket, a phone, recording, because tonight he is going to walk through that front door and tell the woman inside the biggest lie he has ever constructed. Not because he wants to, because it is the only way left to hear the truth. The porch light burns. He reaches for the door handle and stops. Tonight you are going to watch a man discover that the woman sleeping next to him had been planning to leave him for months. You are going to watch him decide not to rage, not to beg, not to explain himself to anyone. And you are going to watch what happens when a patient man finally stops waiting and starts moving. Stay with me, because the part that nobody sees coming, not even him, is still ahead. Darius Ellison sat in the car for 22 minutes. Engine off, lights off, the house in front of him glowing warm from the inside, every window lit like nothing was wrong, like it was just a Thursday, like it was just November, like the world was still the shape he thought it was this morning when he drove to work with his coffee in the cup holder and his notebook in his jacket pocket, and no particular reason to question anything. He sat there because he was preparing, not afraid, prepared. There is a difference between those two things, and Darius had understood the difference for a long time. He was 41 years old, senior marketing manager for a regional healthcare company in Charlotte, North Carolina. $94,000 a year, a house he'd been paying mortgage on for 4 years. A wife named Renee who taught yoga 15 hours a week and kissed him goodbye every morning and asked about his day every evening. He had a life, and tonight he was going to walk into that life and tell the biggest lie he had ever constructed. Not because he wanted to, because he needed to hear the truth. His phone was in his breast pocket, on, recording. He had confirmed the law with Gloria Simmons 3 days ago. North Carolina General Statute 15A287, one-party consent. He was a party to any conversation that occurred in his own home. The recording was legal, clean, admissible. That did not make it feel like something he had ever expected to be doing. He got out of the car, walked up the porch steps, left side of the third one, where it had always creaked since the second winter they lived here, unlocked the deadbolt, stepped inside. The house smelled like rosemary. Renee was on the couch with her laptop. She looked up when he came in and something moved across her face. Quick, controlled, arranged back into neutrality before he could fully read it. "You're home on time," she said, which was not a strange thing to say. "Except it used to be your home," said warmly, like his arrival was a good thing. "Renee," he said. He set his bag down slowly, like it was heavy, like the day had been long and hard and had taken something out of him. He sat in the armchair across from her. She closed the laptop. He looked at his hands for a moment, then he looked at her. "I need to tell you something." She went still in the particular way of a person who already knows something is coming and is deciding how to receive it before it arrives. "I got laid off today," he said. "The room did something, or maybe he did. He was watching too carefully, trying too precisely." First, her face went blank, not shocked. Blank, the way a screen looks between images, processing. Then her eyes moved, not to him, slightly left, somewhere in the middle distance where people go when they are running numbers. Then the concern assembled itself. Piece by piece, eyebrows drawing together, lips parting slightly, posture shifting forward, the body language of a wife receiving difficult news. "What?" she said. "Budget cuts. They're eliminating the whole department, effective immediately." He kept his voice at the right weight, tired, gutted, but trying not to show how gutted. 3 months severance, maybe longer to find something new. The market is not good right now. Renee stood up, not toward him. She stood and turned toward the window, 2 steps, her back to him for just a moment. 6 years, she said. They can just do that? Apparently, she turned back around, and there it was. That thing underneath the concern. Not grief. Calculation, moving behind her eyes like math being done in another room. "What about your investment account?" she said. Darius looked at her. Everything inside him went very, very still. "What about it? I mean, we should probably figure out what we're working with, what we can access. How long we can manage before. We might have to sell the house," he said. She stopped. My savings won't cover expenses indefinitely, he continued. And your income from the classes is around $2,000 a month. That doesn't stretch far in Charlotte. He paused. I might need to use the investment account. Draw it down while I look for something new. Renee was quiet for 4 full seconds. He counted them. I need to call Phyllis, she said. I need to talk to someone. Is that okay? Of course, Darius said. I'll be in the study. She was already reaching for her phone before she left the room. He watched her go, waited until he heard the bedroom door close. Then he stood up, walked to the hallway, and stood outside that door. His phone was warm in his breast pocket. Still recording. Her voice came through in pieces, sharp, urgent. Nothing managed about it now. Phyllis, we have a serious problem. A pause while Phyllis responded. Darius could not make out Phyllis's words. He did not need to. He just told me he got laid off. The whole department. Another pause. I know. But listen. If he's unemployed when I file, the alimony calculation is based on his income at the time of separation. That was the whole point. Wait until the 5-year mark. File when the income is at its highest. That was the plan. Darius stood in the hallway, not moving. Breathing slow, and even because the body sometimes knows to be quiet when the mind needs to hear everything. His investment account is around $43,000. His 401k may be $90. Split that plus alimony based on the $94 he's been making. Phyllis, we planned for a specific number, and if he's on unemployment when I file, that number disappears. A longer pause. I don't know if I can wait 7 more months. Not with this. Maybe I just file now and take what I can get. Her voice dropped even lower, like she was moving to the far side of the room. I checked out of this a long time ago. He comes home at 6:30 every single day and makes his coffee and writes in his little notebook, and that is the whole thing. That is the entire thing. I'm 33 years old. I cannot spend the rest of my life being an afterthought in someone else's routine. The money is what I'm owed. For 4.5 years, that is what I am owed. Darius walked back to the study, sat down, looked at nothing for a while. He took the notebook from his jacket pocket, opened it to a blank page, picked up the pen, set it back down. There was nothing to write. Everything that needed documenting was already in his pocket on a recording. Everything that needed remembering he was going to remember whether he wanted to or not. He sat in that study for 38 minutes. When Renee came downstairs, her face was arranged again. She put her hand on his shoulder and told him they would figure it out together, that they were a team. For better or worse. For better or worse, he nodded. Said he was going to bed early. She said that was a good idea. He lay in the dark for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called Gloria Simmons. It rang twice. Darius. I have all of it, he said, in her own words. A pause, short and considered. Play it for me. He played it. He heard something shift in Gloria's breathing somewhere in the middle. Not dramatically, just a slight change. The sound of a person encountering something that confirms what they suspected but lands harder than they expected even so. When it ended, she was quiet for a moment. That, she said carefully, is documented intent. She laid out the strategy, the timeline, and the financial targets, voluntarily, in her own voice. A pause. Tomorrow morning. Bank opens at 9. I need you there when it does. He already knew what she was going to say, but he let her say it. Move half the joint savings to an individual account. Your legal right. Change the beneficiaries on your 401k and life insurance. Then come to my office. Another pause. We file Friday. She'll be served the following Thursday. Renee was waiting for June. She had 7 months left in her plan. She was going to have 8 days. Can you hold it together until then? Gloria asked. Act normal. Nothing changes on your end. Darius looked at the ceiling, thought about 6:30, about the ritual that apparently defined everything and meant nothing. About 4.5 years of showing up to a house where someone was quietly calculating the exit. I've been acting normal for 3 weeks, he said. Then 8 more days shouldn't be a problem. She was right. It was not. The 9th floor smelled like old paper and central heating. Gloria Simmons had the kind of office that did not perform itself. No framed credentials arranged for maximum visibility. No motivational text on the walls. Just a desk that was always clean. A few files. A window that looked out over uptown Charlotte in a way that was useful rather than decorative. She was 51 years old and she had handled more divorce cases than she could count from memory. She had seen people come through that door in every possible condition. Rage, collapse, cold fury, numb shock. The ones who wanted justice, and the ones who wanted destruction, and the ones who could not yet tell the difference between the two. She had known which kind Darius was within 10 minutes of their first meeting. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. He saw Tat. She opened the folder in front of her and walked him through everything, The asset transfer. The beneficiary changes he had already completed that morning. The filing. The timeline. She spoke the way she always spoke. Plainly, without softening things that did not need softening. Without dramatizing things that were already dramatic enough on their own. He listened, asked 2 questions, both of them procedural. She answered both, then she slid the papers across the desk. He read each page before he signed it, all the way through. She had learned years ago that this was the kind of man he was, not paranoid, not distrustful, just someone who believed that you read the thing before you commit to it. She had stopped trying to hurry clients like him. They were always right. He signed where she indicated, set the pen down. She'll be served Thursday afternoon, Gloria said. We time it for mid-afternoon, after her morning classes. Before she has time to reach her own attorney. He nodded. Are you ready for that? He thought about the question the way he thought about everything, without rushing the answer. Ready isn't the right word, he said. What is? Clear. He looked at her. I'm clear on what happened and what needs to happen. That's different from ready. Gloria looked at him across the desk for a moment. It is, she said. It's better, actually. She closed the folder. One more thing. Her voice shifted slightly. Not softer, more direct. In the days between now and Thursday and in the weeks after, she may try to reach you through channels that aren't legal. Personal appeals. Emotional pressure. Things designed to make you feel like you did something wrong. She paused. You didn't. Protecting yourself when someone is actively positioning to harm you financially is not manipulation. It is prudence. Don't let anyone reframe that for you. Deer stood and picked up his jacket. I won't, he said. He meant it. He drove back across town, went to work, sat at his desk, reviewed copy for a regional healthcare campaign that his director had described as the sharpest positioning they'd had in 2 years. He worked until 6. Then he drove home at his usual time and walked up those porch steps and unlocked the deadbolt and ate dinner with his wife and said nothing and felt exactly as clear as he'd told Gloria he was. 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. 3 days of the most ordinary life he had ever lived while knowing precisely how unordinary everything underneath it was. He made coffee each morning, ground the beans by hand, the way his father Walter had shown him, not as a lesson, not as a passed-down wisdom speech, just by doing it in front of him enough times that the knowledge transferred the way things do between people who pay attention to the same things. He heated the water to just below boiling, poured it slow over the grounds, waited 8 minutes. He had been doing this every Monday morning since his father died 11 years ago, and somewhere along the way it had become every morning. Not a ritual for show, not a thing he talked about, just the way the day began. Renee had never understood it. He had not needed her to. He drove to work, came home at 6:30, cooked dinner Tuesday, pasta with a jarred sauce because Tuesday was not a cooking night. It was a getting through the week night, and that distinction mattered. He set the table, sat across from Renee, talked about her Thursday classes, about a podcast she'd been listening to, about whether the gutters needed cleaning before winter arrived in any serious way. Normal conversation, completely normal. Except underneath it, in the frequencies that did not make sounds, Darius was doing what he always did, watching, recording in the way that predated any phone. Noting the way she checked her phone 3 times during dinner on Monday, the way she flinched slightly when he mentioned his mother might visit in December, the way she had stopped touching him in the small casual ways that couples touch, a hand on the arm reaching past him for something, a brief pressure on the shoulder passing in the hallway. Withdrawal. Incremental. Designed, consciously or not, to reduce the emotional debt on her side before the exit. He had read about this in an article Gloria had sent him. How people who are planning to leave often begin detaching physically and emotionally before they tell anyone they are leaving. The body preparing even while the words are still being held back. He understood it. He did not forgive it, but this Tuesday afternoon at his desk, he received a forwarded email from Gloria. Renee's attorney, a woman named Bernadette Walsh, whom he was now learning existed, had reached out. Preliminary contact. She was representing Renee Ellison in a matter concerning the Ellison marriage. He read the email once, forwarded it back to Gloria with one line, noted, proceed as planned. Wednesday he worked late. Not because of the case. Because the campaign deadline was real and the work was good, and he had always been the kind of man who finished what he started regardless of what else was happening around him. His director stopped by his desk at 5:45. "This positioning is really sharp, Darius. Best version of this campaign we've had." "Thank you," he said. "You doing okay? You seem focused." "I'm always focused," Darius said. His director laughed. "True," she said, and walked on. He sat at his desk after she left and looked at that for a moment. He was always focused. Even now, even this week. Even with the whole architecture of his personal life dismantling itself in the background. He thought that was either a sign of strength or a sign of something else he would have to examine later, when there was time. He filed it in the notebook under the second category. Wednesday he drove home. Ate leftover pasta cold from the container standing at the kitchen counter because Renee's already upstairs and he did not want to sit at that table alone. He washed the container, put it in recycling, wiped down the counter, stood in the kitchen of the house for a moment, listened to it. It had a sound. Every house did. This one hummed slightly from the refrigerator. The pipes in the wall clicked when the heat came on. The third stair creaked. He had lived inside these sounds for 4 years and 5 months. He looked around the kitchen, thought about whether there was anything here he would miss. The answer was yes, but not the things. Not the appliances or the countertops or the particular angle of the afternoon light through the window above the sink. What he would miss was the version of this that he had believed in. The version where these sounds meant home. He turned off the kitchen light, went upstairs, went to sleep. At 2:47 p.m. on Thursday, he was at his desk reviewing the final draft of the campaign copy when his phone buzzed. Text, "She's been served." 2:47 p.m. He set the phone face down on the desk, looked at his monitor. Read the same sentence 4 times without processing any of it. Then he looked out the window. Charlotte. November. Flat gray sky pressing down on the uptown buildings. Traffic on the street below moving in that patient way traffic moves when it has nowhere urgent to be. At 3:14 his phone rang. Rennie, he watched it ring once. He needed a moment. Twice. He needed to be sure of his voice. 3 times. Not anger. Not cold. Clear. He picked up on the 4th ring. "Hello?" Her voice was a thing being held together by force. "What is this, Darius?" "I am holding legal documents. Someone came to my class. In front of my students." "I know," he said. "What do you mean you know? How can you Renee?" Just her name, quiet, firm. The voice of a man who has been clear for 8 days and is not going to be rattled now. "I didn't get laid off." Silence. Real silence. The kind that takes up space. "I made that up. Every word of it. I've been at this desk every day this week. My director complimented the campaign copy on Tuesday. Nothing from her end. It was a test," he said. "You answered it. In your own words. I have all of it." When she spoke, her voice had gone somewhere different, lower. "Stripped of the performance, you recorded me. I was present for the conversation, in my own home. North Carolina law is clear. You set me up." He let that sit for a moment. Let her hear how it sounded in the silence that followed it. "Rennie," he said, "you hired an attorney in August. You have been meeting with her every 2 weeks since the first Friday of that month. You calculated the 5-year mark. You worked out the asset split and the alimony formula. You had a strategy." A pause. "What did I set up?" "Nothing. My attorney will be in contact with yours," he said. "Read the settlement carefully." He ended the call, set the phone on the desk, opened the notebook, wrote the date, the time, 4 words beneath them. She was served today. He closed the notebook and went back to the copy. Because the work was due Friday morning, and he finished what he started. That evening he called Calvin from the parking garage, not to process the day, not to be walked through anything, just because Calvin had been his closest friend for 19 years, and some things you do, because the person has been present long enough that their presence itself is the point. Calvin picked up on the 2nd ring. "You good?" Calvin said. "No," Darius said, a brief pause. "Where are you?" "Parking garage, work." "I'll come to the parking garage at work," Calvin said. "You don't need to do that." "I'm already putting on my shoes," Calvin said. He came. They sat in Darius's car in the parking garage for 40 minutes. Calvin brought nothing. Said almost nothing. Asked one question at the very end. When Darius had run out of words for what the week had been. "Are you clear?" Calvin asked. Darius thought about it. "Yeah," I said, "I'm clear." Calvin nodded once. Looked out through the windshield at the concrete levels of the garage. "Then you're okay," Calvin said. "Not good, but okay." He glanced. "Oh, that's enough for tonight." It was. Darius drove to the extended stay apartment he had rented the previous Friday. A furnished one-bedroom on the west side of Charlotte that he had chosen specifically because it had good morning light and nothing in it that reminded him of the life he was in the middle of leaving. He made tea because he had not yet bought a coffee grinder for this place, and tea was what was available. He sat by the window, opened the notebook to a blank page, wrote 2 words at the top. Stay clear. Then he looked out at Charlotte, doing what Charlotte always did at 10:30 on a Thursday night. Moving. Lit. Indifferent in the best possible way. He was 41 years old, and everything was different now. And everything that mattered about him was exactly the same. He closed the notebook, put it on the nightstand, and went to sleep. The apartment did not have a coffee grinder. He had known this when he went to sleep. He knew it again when he woke at 6:41 and stood in the small kitchen looking at the coffee maker that beeped and delivered warmth on a schedule and had no relationship whatsoever with intention or patience, or the particular quality of intention that made an ordinary morning mean something. He used it anyway, because some mornings you just need the coffee, not the ritual, not the memory of your father standing at a stove in a house that smelled like old wood, just the heat in your hands and the quiet in the window and whatever the day is going to ask of you next. He stood at the window while it brewed. Charlotte on a Friday morning in late November. Gray sky. The city waking up in that specific way it did on Fridays. Slightly looser than the rest of the week, people moving with a fraction more ease, as if the weekend was already doing something to the air. His phone rang at 8:15. Gloria. How are you holding up? I'm fine, he said. A pause. She was deciding whether to pursue that. She decided not to. Bernadette Walsh reached out last night, she said. Bernadette Walsh was Renee's attorney. He had learned her name from the preliminary email earlier that week. They want to negotiate. Counterproposal incoming by end of day today. Already. Which tells you exactly what I would have told you if you'd asked. Her attorney looked at what we have and told her the same thing I would have told any client in her position. This is not a fight you want to take in front of a judge. What do we do? Nothing yet. If we receive the proposal, we read it. We wait 2 days before responding. Because waiting communicates something too. It says we are not afraid of the timeline. It says we have nothing to lose by being patient. A pause, which is true. He almost smiled at that. Patient. Of all the things he had been called in his life, patient was the one that had stuck. His father had been patient. His mother still was. It was the quality he trusted most in himself and the one that had served him best in every hard thing he had moved through. One more thing, Gloria said. Her voice shifted into the register she used when she wanted him to actually hear something and not just process it. She may come at you personally in the coming days. Letters, calls through people you both know. Things designed to make you feel responsible for her situation. I know, and when that happens, I stay clear, he said. A brief pause. Yes, she said. Exactly that. She hung up. He finished his coffee, rinsed the cup, put on his jacket, and drove to work, because it was Friday, and the campaign copy was due by noon. Monday came with cold sunshine, the kind that looked generous from inside and then reminded you of its true intentions the moment you stepped through a door. Sharp. The light that November uses when it wants you to see things clearly whether you are ready to or not. Darius was at the bank when it opened at 9. The joint savings account held $8,700. He transferred $4,350 to a new individual account, exactly half, to the dollar. Because this was not about taking more than was his. It had never been about that. It was about making sure that what was his remained his during the period when legal protections were still being assembled around him. The teller was a young woman who asked if he needed anything else. No, he said. Thank you. Have a great Monday, she said. You too, he said. He drove from the bank to the offices of Ellison and Moore Financial on Beatty's Ford Road. Not his wife firm. His firm was downtown. But this was where his 401k was administered, and sat across from a representative whose name he did not retain and changed the beneficiary from Renee Ellison to Evelyn Ellison, his mother. Then he drove to the insurance office and did the same thing with the life insurance. All of this before 11 a.m. All of it clean, legal, exactly what Gloria had told him to do, and exactly what he would have done anyway if he had thought of it himself. Because it was the right thing and the necessary thing and the kind of move that a man makes when he has decided to protect himself without apology. On the way back through Uptown, he stopped at a light on Tryon Street and sat there while the city moved around him. A woman pushing a stroller. Two men in suits talking too close to each other for the cold. A delivery truck double parked with its hazards going. The ordinary machinery of a Monday morning doing what Monday mornings do. He thought about Renee, not about what she had done. He had thought about that enough. He thought about the specific shape of the 4 years and 5 months they had shared. Not the version he had believed in while he was inside it. The version he could see now from the outside of it, with the distance that the past week had given him, whether he wanted it or not. The vacations, the dinners. The Sunday mornings that had been genuinely good for a long time before they stopped being good. The way she laughed at things he did not expect her to find funny. The way she had looked at him on the morning of their wedding, with an expression he had not been able to name then, and could still not name now. Only knew that it had been real. He believed it had been real. That was not the comfort it might have been. If anything, it made the bank statements worse. The light changed. He drove. He was at his desk by 11:45. His director came by at noon with a printed copy of the final campaign. "This is good work," she said. "Really good. The regional board is going to respond well to this." "Thank you," he said. She looked at him for a moment, not with suspicion, with the particular attention of someone who has managed people long enough to read the gap between how looks and how they say they are. "You doing all right?" she said. He said. She nodded, moved on. He ate lunch at his desk and spent the afternoon building the next campaign from scratch. She had the folder open when he arrived. He sat down across from her, and she did not lead with anything except the thing itself, which was why he trusted her. "Renee's counter-proposal came in Friday afternoon," she said. "As expected." She slid a single page across the desk. "They're asking for $32,000 in lump sum settlement plus 18 months of alimony at $1,400 a month. Total liability to you of approximately $57,000. He read it, set it down. "No," he said. "No," she agreed. "But before we respond, I need to show you something." She opened a second folder, wider, more pages. Yellow highlighter on a column of dates running down the left margin. "I requested these through our subpoena process last week. Bank records, credit card statements. Specifically, Renee's personal visa." He pulled bold toward him. "August 4th, lunch, Carver Street Bistro, $41. August 18th, lunch, Carver Street Bistro, $38. September Bist. Carver Street lunch, $44. September 15th, same. October 3rd, same restaurant, $40. October 17th, November 5th, same every 2 weeks, like a standing appointment. Going back to the first Friday of August. That restaurant," Gloria said, "is 2 blocks from Bernadette Walsh's office on South Church Street. I confirmed it Tuesday morning." Darius looked at the dates, looked at the first one, August 4th. He did the math the way he always did, without trying. Numbers moved through him like language moved through other people, fast and involuntary. He and Renee had returned from Savannah on July 31st, 4 days. 4 days between coming home from a weekend where she had held his hand through the squares of Forsyth Park, where she had suggested the trip, where she had chosen the rental house and the restaurant for Saturday dinner, and the route they walked Sunday morning through streets that smelled like history and Spanish moss, and something green he could not identify. 4 days between that weekend and the first lunch with a divorce attorney. He sat with that, did not speak for a moment, because some information needs a moment before it becomes a thing you can hold without it breaking something. 4 days, he said finally. Not to her, to himself. "Yes," Gloria said quietly. "She planned the vacation." "I know." He looked up at her. She suggested it. She chose the dates. She found the house. He stopped. She was saying goodbye. Gloria said nothing, which was the right thing. He looked back at the statements. "What does this do to the case?" he said. "It destroys the foundation of any alimony claim," Gloria said. "Their argument would need to be that the marriage deteriorated due to circumstances or your behavior. These records establish that she was actively planning to end the marriage before any event that could support that argument. She had an attorney before she had a grievance, at least any grievance she could name." Gloria paused. "We counter with the original terms. No alimony. Split equity only. Individual as accounts stay individual. Clean and final. And we attach these statements to the counter. What's your read on whether Walsh accepts?" "She has to," Gloria said simply. "Or we go in front of a judge with this, the recording, and the patent documentation. And Walsh knows what a judge does, with a Folktales where one party can demonstrate the other was strategically positioning from August while presenting as a committed spouse. Darius nodded. Send the counter, he said. Original terms. No movement. Gloria picked up her pen. Done, she said. He stood, put his jacket on, looked out her window at the uptown skyline for a moment, not at anything specific, just at the general fact of the city continuing to exist and operate regardless of what was happening inside this room. Gloria, he said. Yes, thank you for the statements. He paused, for finding them before I knew to look. She looked at him with the expression of a woman who had been doing this work for 23 years and had developed a clear-eyed relationship with what it cost people. That's the job, she said. I know, he said. Still, he left, walked down 9 floors, stepped out onto South Tryon and stood on the sidewalk for a moment in the cold November air. August 4th, $41. Carver Street Bistro, 2 blocks from where Renee's attorney had been waiting. He put his hands in his coat pockets, felt the notebook there, walked to his car. Calvin texted at noon, hot dog truck. 12:30, you eating or not? Not a question, not an invitation exactly. Just Calvin's way of saying he was going to be somewhere, and Darius could be there too if he wanted to not be alone in the middle of the day, which Calvin had apparently decided he needed without Darius saying so. He texted back, I'm eating. Henry's cart was on the corner of Tryon and 8th, where it had been every Wednesday and Friday for what felt like the better part of a decade. Henry Beaumont was 68 years old. He had worked for the city in parks and recreation for 31 years, and then retired and bought a cart cause. As he had explained to Darius once, he did not know what to do with himself at home, and at least out here people were glad to see him. He was not a complicated man. He was one of Darius's favorite people. Henry looked up from the grill when they walked over, did not ask how they were doing, did not comment on the fact that it was a Wednesday and Darius was usually not available Wednesdays, just looked at him and said, without missing a single beat, double with extra mustard. Same as always. That was it. That was the whole thing. Darius stood in the November cold and felt something move through him that was not quite relief and not quite gratitude but lived in the neighborhood of both. The specific and uncomplicated comfort of being known. Not deeply, not intimately, just known in the small, particular way that means someone registered your pattern, held it without being asked, offered it back without ceremony. A man who knows how you take your lunch is not nothing. Not on a week like this. He paid for both. They stood at the edge of the sidewalk and ate. The bench nearby was wet from the previous night, and neither of them mentioned it. They ate standing up and watched Tryon Street do what Tryon Street did and said almost nothing for several minutes. Then, Calvin said, how bad? Not a question. A prompt. Bank statements, Darius said. She started in August. Calvin looked at him. We got back from Savannah on a Wednesday, Darius said. She had lunch with a divorce attorney the following Friday. Calvin was quiet for a moment. That's the part that's going to take a while, he said. Yeah. Trying to figure out which parts were real. Darius ate, looked at the street. They were real, he said. I think they were all real. The weekend was real, the hand-holding was real, and she still had an appointment with an attorney 4 days later. He paused. Both things are true. That's the part that doesn't have a clean answer. Calvin nodded slowly. No, he said, it doesn't. They stood there a while longer. The city moved around them. Someone honked. A bus went by breathing heat. 2 women walked past, talking fast about something that sounded urgent and probably wasn't. She thought she had 7 months, Calvin said. She had 8 days, Darius said. Calvin almost smiled. Not at the satisfaction of it, at the precision. The architecture of a plan undone by its own assumptions. You always did think 3 moves ahead, he said. 2, Darius said. I only needed 2 this time. They threw away the wrappers. Calvin had to get back. He put his hand on Darius's shoulder for a moment, brief, firm, the gesture of a man who has run out of words and knows that this is sometimes better than words anyway. Then he left. Darius stood on the corner for another minute. Thought about August 4th, thought about Savannah, put it away, got in his car, drove back to work. He was at his desk when Gloria texted at 3:14. Conference call. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. All 4 of us. Walsh wants to talk before this goes further. He stared at the message, then typed back, I'll be there. Her next message came 30 seconds later. Let me do the talking. Whatever's said on that call, you say nothing unless I ask you directly. Understood? He typed. Understood. Then he put the phone in his jacket pocket. and sat in the extended stay apartment that evening with the lights low and the notebook open on the table in front of him. He had eaten something. He could not have said what, something from the refrigerator that required no preparation, and now he sat and looked at the pages. He had started this notebook in January, 11 months ago, in the kitchen of the house on the other side of Charlotte. A Monday morning, coffee made by hand. The first page dated in the way he always dated them, clean top right corner, the year spelled out in full. He flipped to the front, January 3rd. Read forward through the year. Lists and observations and the occasional thing that was neither. Just a sentence that had come to him from somewhere during a day and needed to land somewhere before it disappeared. March. A thing does not have to be wrong from the beginning to go wrong. June, the week of their anniversary. 5 years feels like an achievement and also like nothing at all. September, a Tuesday. She asked about the investment account again today. 3rd time this month. Filed for later. He had written that in September and looked at it and filed it for later, and later had arrived, and here he was. He closed the notebook. The apartment was quiet in the way of places that have not yet accumulated any sound of their own. No history in the walls. No particular creak or hum that meant something. Just neutral space. Just air. He called his mother. Evelyn Ellison picked up on the second ring the way she always did, as if the phone ringing was the world catching up to something she already knew was on its way. "Baby," she said. Just that word. And Darius sat in quiet apartment on a Thursday night and let himself be exactly as tired as he actually was. He did not collapse. He was not built for collapse in the theatrical sense. But he talked to his mother for 51 minutes, about his father Walter, who had been a contractor for 31 years and had known which cracks in a structure mattered and which ones were cosmetic. About the notebook and why he kept it, and what it had meant to him every morning for more than a decade now. About Savannah, which he finally said out loud to another person for the time. The rental house, the squares, the hand holding August 4th, and which landed differently spoken aloud than it had sitting alone in his chest for the past week. His mother listened, without rushing to fix it, without performing distress in a way that would have required him to manage her instead of being managed. Just listening. At the end she said, "Your father would know exactly what to say right now." What would he say? A pause. He'd say, "You already know what to do. You've always known. You just needed to make sure." Another pause. "And now you're sure?" He thought about it. "Yeah," he said. "I'm sure." They said good night. He put the phone on the nightstand, looked at the ceiling for a while. Friday morning he woke at 6:38 and stood in the kitchen of the apartment he was slowly making his own. A coffee grinder had appeared on the counter 2 days ago. Ordered Tuesday, delivered Thursday, and made coffee the way it was supposed to be made. Ground the beans, heated the water to just below boiling, poured slow, waited 8 minutes. He took the cup to the window, Charlotte on a Friday. The light coming in at an angle he had not expected when he chose this apartment, but had come to appreciate. Something about the way the buildings on the next block channeled the morning east, so that his window caught the first hour of it directly, clean and unhurried. At 2 p.m. he was in a conference room in Gloria's office. Phone on the table between them. Speaker on. Bernadette Walsh opened the call, efficient, well prepared. She outlined Renee's position with the fluency of someone who had delivered a particular argument many times in many rooms. Contributions to the household, career opportunities deferred, emotional investment across 4.5 years of marriage, the recording obtained through manufactured circumstances, and therefore ethically compromised whatever its legal standing. Darius listened, said nothing, looked at the phone on the table and said nothing. Walsh made a revised proposal, $28,000 in lump sum, 12 months of alimony at $1,200 a month, tall approximately $42,000 than the first proposal, which meant they were moving, which meant they were scared. Gloria responded, methodical, unruffled. She laid out the bank statements, dates, restaurant, proximity to all's own office. She referenced the forum records, the pattern documentation, the recording. She presented all of it the way a person presents a hand of cards they have been holding patiently since before the other player knew there was a game. There was a silence on the line. Then Walsh said she would need to consult with her client. Gloria said, of course. The call ended. Darius sat looking at the on the call. You didn't say a word, Gloria said. You told me not to. I tell a lot of people that, she said. Most of them can't do it when it's their own life being discussed like a line item. He picked up his jacket. What's next? We wait, she said. She's going to accept. Her attorney knows it. Give it 72 hours. He nodded. Walked out, down the 9 floors, back onto South Tryon. He did not stand on the sidewalk this time. He walked directly to his car, got in and sat for a moment with his hands resting on the wheel, not gripping, just resting. He thought about what it meant to be patient. His father had told him once, not as advice, just as an observation, the way Walter Ellison made most of his important statements, sideways and without announcement, that patience was not the absence of movement. It was the decision to move only when movement meant something. Darius had spent the past 2 weeks moving only when it meant something. He had transferred exactly half, signed exactly what needed signing, said nothing on the conference call, waited 2 days before responding to the counter-proposal. Every move deliberate, every move clean. He started the car, drove back to the apartment with the good morning light, made tea because the evening did not call for coffee, sat by the window, opened the notebook to a blank page, wrote 1 line, not for anyone else, not for documentation, just for himself because his father's son was a man who wrote things down, and what he wrote was, "The move that wins is often the one you don't make." He closed the notebook, set it on the table, looked out at Charlotte doing what Charlotte does on a Friday night, moving lit, indifferent in the best possible way, entirely unconcerned with the private arithmetic of one man's life. He was not okay. He was clear, and clear he had learned was enough to work with. At 11:43 the following Monday morning, an email arrived from Gloria. 2 sentences. They accepted. Original terms. Call me when you can. He read it twice, set his phone face down on the desk, looked at his monitor, at the campaign he had been building for the past week that his director had called the sharpest regional positioning they'd produced in 2 years. He looked at it for a moment. Then he picked up the phone and called Gloria. "It's done," she said when she picked up. "What happens now?" "Now we file with the court. Given that both parties have signed and the separation period is satisfied, we should have a final decree within 4 to 6 weeks. A pause. "Darius, it's done. You protected yourself. You did everything right." He nodded at the phone, knowing she couldn't see it, doing it anyway. "Thank you, Gloria," he said. "Go do your work," she said, not unkindly, just accurately. "That's the best thing you can do today." She was right, Rod, he did. On somewhere across tall Charlotte in a yoga studio on the east side, Renee Ellison was teaching a Wednesday morning class, moving through poses with people who had no idea what her life looked like outside these walls. Breathing instructions into a room full of people who had come here to feel something uncomplicated for an hour. He thought about that, did not think about it for long. He had work to do, and he had always been the kind of man who finished what he started. But he did not know yet what was still coming. He did not know that in 11 days, on a Sunday night, his phone was going to ring with a number he did not recognize. He did not know that the voice on the other end would belong to Phyllis. He did not know what Phyllis knew, or what knowing it was going to ask of him. The part that revealed who Darius Ellison actually was. Not what had been done to him, but what had just to do about it. Had not happened yet. It was still ahead. And it was going to be harder than any of this. The call came at 8:47 p.m. He was at the table by the window, notebook open but not being written in. A documentary on the television that he had stopped watching 40 minutes ago, but had not turned off because the sound of voices in the room was preferable to the particular quality of silence that empty apartments produce on Sunday nights. His phone lit up. Unknown number. Charlotte area code. He looked at it for a moment, picked up on the 3rd ring. Hello. A pause, long enough to mean something. The pause of a person standing at the edge of a thing they have decided to do and are making sure at the last possible moment that they are still decided. "Mr. Ellison." A woman's voice, careful, controlled in the way of someone managing considerable discomfort. "This is Phyllis Gaines." "Renee," she stopped, reorganized. "I know you don't have any reason to speak with me. I understand that completely. But I need to say something, not for Renee. For me." Another pause. "And maybe for you if you're willing to hear it." He reached over and turned off the television. The apartment went quiet. "I'm listening," he said. She exhaled. He could hear it. The breath of someone who has been holding something for a long time and is only now beginning to set it down. "Could we?" she said. "Somewhere public. I won't take much of your time." He looked at the notebook on the table in front of him, thought about what Gloria had said. "She may come at you personally." things designed to make you feel responsible. But this did not sound like strategy. This sounded like someone who had run out of strategies and was left with only the thing underneath them. Tomorrow morning, he said, 9 o'clock. There's a coffee shop on Caldwell Street called Provision. You choose somewhere you know. I'll find it. Provision works, she said, quickly, like she had been afraid he would say no and was moving fast before the yes could be reconsidered. Thank you, Mr. Ellison. Darius, he said. A brief pause. Thank you, Darius, she said. He ended the call, sat in the quiet of the apartment for a while, opened the notebook, did not write anything, just sat with the open page in front of the way you sit with a question you cannot answer yet, giving it the space it needs to become something you can. He arrived 7 minutes early. Phyllis was already there, 36 years old, which he knew because Renee had mentioned her birthday in passing once. A dinner they had attended, a celebration he had driven to and from without retaining much of. She had been Renee's closest friend since their sophomore year of college. The one who had gone through the divorce 2 years ago. The one whose name he had heard through a closed bedroom door on a Thursday evening in November, receiving information she had no idea was being documented. She looked like someone who had not slept cleanly in a long time, not disheveled, just reduced. The particular look of a person who has been carrying something in a space that was not built for it, and the carrying has begun to show. She had both hands around a coffee cup that had long since stopped steaming. He sat down across from her. She looked at him, did not look away, which he noticed and which told him something. Thank you for coming, she said. Start talking, he said, not unkindly, just directly, because they both knew that was why they were here, and anything else was a delay neither of them needed. She nodded once, and then she talked. He listened the way he listened to everything, without performing reaction, without interrupting to insert himself into the story, just taking it in. She had met her ex-husband Bernard at 24, married at 26, 7 years, the last 2 of which had been what she described, with studied understatement, as not good. The divorce had been contentious. The settlement had ultimately been $130,000. Which she had come to think of not just as money but as proof of something. Proof that she had survived, that she had been smart enough, that the years had not been taken from her without compensation. She had told Renee about the settlement. In detail, more than once. I was proud of it, Phyllis had said, which is not the same thing as being proud of the marriage or even proud of the divorce. But the number, I had turned something terrible into something I could point to. And I kept pointing to it. She looked down at her cup. I told Renee what to ask, what to pay attention to, how the 5-year calculation worked under North Carolina law. I made it sound like wisdom, like I was protecting her. She stopped. I was not protecting her. I was recruiting her. Darius said nothing. Renee was happy, Phyllis said. Her voice had something in it now that was not quite tears, but was close enough to make the distinction irrelevant. When she first brought you around, when you first came into her life, she was genuinely happy in the way that does not need to announce itself. The kind of happy that is just present. And I saw it. I saw it clearly. She looked up at him. And I stopped talking to her about my settlement anyway. The room was doing its Monday morning thing around them. The sound of an espresso machine. 2 men at the counter talking about something work-related. A woman near the window on a laptop. Ordinary life arranged entirely around the edges of this table. There's more, Darius said. Not a question. Yes, she said. She looked at her hands. I introduced her to my attorney. In July. She said it plainly, like a person reading from a document they would rather not be reading from. I did not just suggest she look into her options. I called my attorney directly and set up an introduction. I sat with Renee before the first meeting and told her what to say, what to emphasize, how to frame the marriage in terms that would support the strongest possible position. A pause. And after that first meeting, we talked about it regularly. About the 5-year mark, about the asset calculation, about timing. She stopped. I did not give her advice. I built her a plan, and then I helped her follow it. The word July landed in a specific way. July. He had known August from the bank statements. August 4th, Carver Street Bistro, 2 blocks from Bernadette Walsh's office. The first documented lunch. But July was before August. July was before the first documented lunch. July was before Savannah. He sat with that for a moment. They had driven to Savannah on a Friday at the end of July. Renee had suggested the trip. She had found the rental house. She had chosen the date. She had spent time in July with her attorney and with Phyllis, building the strategy for ending their marriage. And then she had planned a romantic weekend and held his hand through the squares of Forsyth Park. He had known something was off about Savannah. He had not known it was a goodbye. Now he did. He looked at Phyllis across the table. She was watching him as absorbed this, not hiding from the weight of it, not managing his reaction to make it easier on herself, just watching. The way a person watches when they know they have caused damage and are no longer trying to minimize it. "Why are you telling me this?" he said. "Because it's true," she said. "There are a lot of true things people never say." She was quiet for a moment. "Because Renee is not doing well," she said. "And I helped make her who she became, and I have been sitting with that in a very small apartment for 6 weeks, and it has been getting heavier every day. And because," she stopped, started again. "Because I thought if I told you, maybe there was something less permanent than what all of this is becoming." He looked at her. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. She went as Bernard is reopening the settlement. Her face did something, fast and complicated and ending in a stillness that was not calm. "What?" she said. Not a question. A word that comes out when the breath leaves before the sentence is ready. "Your ex-husband, he's filing to reopen the divorce settlement, based on text messages, between you and Renee, the strategic discussions, the timeline planning, the specific language around." He paused, found the phrase, "playing the long game." "His attorney reached out to Gloria last week. Not about our case directly, about yours. Looking for corroboration from the documentation in our proceedings." Phyllis's hands were flat on the table, both of them, perfectly flat, like she needed to feel the surface. "He can do that," she said. The voice of a woman who spent 7 years married to a lawyer and knew the answer before she asked the question. "The text messages established that you were actively coordinating a divorce strategy during a period when you were presenting to the court as someone seeking reconciliation," Darius said. "That's Walsh's read. That's also what Gloria described to me." She closed her eyes, opened them. "How much?" she said. Direct, stripped of everything except the need to know. "He's claiming up to 100,000 of the original settlement." She did the math. He watched her do it. Fast and involuntary, the way math moves through people who have organized their understanding of safety around numbers. "I've spent," she stopped, "most of it. The apartment, a car, a trip I took in the spring because I thought the worst was behind me." She looked at him. "I thought the worst was behind me," held that. Did not offer a version of it that was easier. "So this is what it feels like," she said quietly. "What does? When the thing you did comes back and does it to you." She said it without drama, like she was naming something she had been watching approach for a while and was only now letting herself see it clearly. "I taught Renee to treat her marriage like a transaction. And my own marriage, I did the same thing, different version. Same math." She looked at her hands. "I just didn't call it that." The espresso machine went again across the room. Outside, Caldwell Street was doing what it always did at 9:15 on a Monday. Moving. Ordinary. Entirely unaware of what was happening at this table. Darius looked at Phyllis, thought about what his mother had said. "You already know what to do, you've always known." He thought about his father. About a man who fixed things. Not because he needed to be the one who fixed them, but because he understood that damage left unaddressed does not stay contained. It spreads, and at a certain point the spreading causes more harm than the original wound. He thought about the version of this story where he said nothing, where he walked out of this coffee shop and let whatever was going to happen to Phyllis happen and told himself it was not his concern. He could tell himself that. He could not make himself believe it. "I may be able to help," he said. She looked up. "A statement from me, explaining what I understand about your role. That you are not a neutral party. That's accurate, and I won't pretend otherwise. But that you are operating from your own unresolved experience. That Renee made independent decisions at every stage. That the responsibility for her choices belongs to her, not to you." He paused. "It won't erase the text messages, but it gives your attorney something to work against the narrative that you were orchestrating everything." Phyllis stared at him. "Why would you do that?" she said, and he thought about how to answer that honestly. Not generously. Honestly. "Because what you did was wrong," he said, "and what's happening to Renee because of her own choices is a consequence. But you losing everything because of a legal technicality about text messages, that's not consequence. That's collateral. And I don't want to be the reason someone's life gets taken apart beyond what's actually necessary." He looked at her directly. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because it's the right thing, and I'd rather live in a world where I did the right thing than in one where I had the chance and didn't. Phyllis said nothing for a long moment. I don't deserve that, she said finally. Probably not, he said. But here's what I need from you in return. She waited. I need you to tell Renee about Bernard's case before she hears it from someone else. And I need Renee to write her own statement, explaining her own role. Not blaming you, not minimizing what you did, but making clear that she made her own choices. That you were not pulling her strings. He paused. Can you ask her to do that? Phyllis looked at him for a long moment. Yes, she said. And can she do it honestly? Yes, she said, more quietly. She can. He nodded. Stood up, put on his jacket. Have your attorney call Gloria by Wednesday, he said. We'll coordinate the statements. He left $2 on the table for the coffee he had not ordered. Walked out onto Caldwell Street. Stewed in the cold for a moment. Texted Gloria. We need to talk. Something came up. Not bad. Just new. Her response came in 40 seconds. Come up whenever. I'm here all day. He drove to South Tryon. Gloria listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment in the way she was quiet when she was thinking rather than reacting. You want to write a statement supporting the woman who helped your wife plan to financially exploit your marriage, she said. Yes. Because it's the right thing. Yes. She looked at him. You understand that this has no legal benefit to you whatsoever. I know. And that Bernadette Walsh is going to look at this statement and wonder what your angle is because in her experience nobody does something like this without an angle. Let her wonder, he said. I don't have one. Gloria picked up her pen, turned it over in her hand once. Set it down, she said. Then we do it right. I'll draft the statement, you review it. We make sure it's accurate, specific, and does not overstate your certainty about things you cannot verify correctly. She looked at him. You said Renee would write one too? That's the plan. Get that confirmed before we file anything. Renee's statement carries more weight than yours in this context. Her attorney will need to be involved. Understood. One more thing. She folded her hands on the desk. Darius, what you're doing here is not weakness. I want to say that because I know you don't need me to say it, but I'm saying it anyway. She paused. A lot of people come through this office and they want to win. They want to win so completely that nothing is left standing. And sometimes that's appropriate. But sometimes the person who wins most completely is the one who knows when to stop. When enough has happened and the right thing is to put the thing down. He nodded. You're putting it down, she said. I'm putting down the parts that don't need to keep going, he said. The rest is already done. She nodded once. I'll have a draft of the statement by Thursday, she said. He thanked her and left. In the parking structure on the street level, he sat in his car for a few minutes before starting it. Not because he was upset, because he wanted to think clearly before he moved. He thought about what Phyllis had said. I thought the worst was behind me. He understood that. The specific relief of believing the hardest part was over. The way you reorganize your life around that belief. Build things on top of it. Take a trip in the spring because you have earned the spring. And then the ground shifts again. He thought about Renee. Renee, who was going to find out about Bernard's case from Phyllis, who was going to sit with that information and figure out what it meant and what it asked of her, who had, somewhere between August and November, become a version of herself she had not chosen to become, and who was now, according to Phyllis, in the difficult process of becoming someone else again. He did not feel sorry for her, but he did not feel nothing. He started the car, drove to the office, worked until 6:30. He had suggested a park. Not a coffee shop, not a restaurant, not any interior space where the furniture and the ambient noise would give them something to perform around. Just a park, in December, which was cold but clear. The kind of Charlotte December that arrived occasionally like a gift, bright and still and just warm enough to be outside if you were moving or had coffee in your hands. Renee was on the bench near the east entrance when he arrived. He had texted her 4 days ago. 3 sentences. I need to see you, not about the lawyers. When you're ready? She had responded in 11 minutes. 11. She was wearing a coat he did not recognize, gray, simple. Her hair pulled back. She looked at him when he approached and did not look away, which was the same thing he had noticed about Phyllis. The women in this story had stopped hiding from him, and he was not sure what that meant, except that it felt like a change in the weather. He sat down on the bench, not close, not distant, The appropriate space of two people who had once shared everything and were now navigating the geography of having shared nothing for a while. She burst. Phyllis called me, she said. I know. She told me about Bernard. A pause. She told me what you offered to do. He nodded. Renee looked out at the park. A couple walking a dog near the pond. Two kids on the path with their father, running ahead and being called back. The ordinary Saturday afternoon population of a city that did not know or care what was happening on this bench. Why, she said. He had thought about how to answer this since Monday morning. Not to prepare a speech, just to make sure the answer was honest rather than performed. Because collateral damage is not the same thing as justice, he said. What happened between us, the settlement, the assets, the terms, that's done and it's right, and I don't regret any of it. But Phyllis losing everything because of text messages is not part of that. It's just additional destruction. And I don't need additional destruction. I have what I need. Renee was quiet. I need you to write a statement, he said. Your attorney will need to be involved. It needs to be honest. Not exonerating Phyllis, not minimizing what she did, but accurate about the fact that you made your own decisions. That she gave you information and a framework and you chose what to do with it. He looked at her. Can you do that honestly? She turned to look at him. And this was the moment, the one he had not quite anticipated, where he saw something in her face that he recognized from the very beginning of knowing her, before the plan, before August, before whatever had happened between the woman who had held his hand in Savannah and the woman who had been running calculations at the dinner table. Just Renee, tired, clear, present. Yes, she said, I can do that honestly. He nodded. They were quiet for a moment. Then I'm in therapy. Good, he said. 3 weeks now. She looked back at the park. My therapist says I have a thing about financial security. That growing up watching my parents fight about money every week. And they fought about money constantly, Darius. I never told you that. I was ashamed of it. That it made me see stability as something you have to lock in before it disappears. Before someone takes it. She paused. I started seeing our marriage through that lens. And once I was seeing it that way, I couldn't stop. He thought about that. About a girl in a house full of money arguments. Learning early that security was not something that stayed unless you secured it. Building a relationship with financial safety that had nothing to do with the actual person across the table from her. You never told me about your parents, he said. I know. She looked at her hands. I was afraid you'd think less of where I came from. I wouldn't have, he said. I know that now, she said. I knew it then too, I just couldn't make myself believe it. She was quiet for a moment. That's the part my therapist keeps coming back to. The knowing and the not believing. The gap between those two things is where most of the damage happens. He considered that. Filed it somewhere. I did love you, she said. Her voice was very quiet now, not performing the statement. Just saying it because it needed to be said by someone who meant it. Not in the end the way I should have. Not in the end the way you deserved. But at the beginning, and for a long time after the beginning, it was real. He held that, gave it the space it deserved. I know, he said. I'm sorry, she said. I know that doesn't fix anything. It doesn't, he said. But I believe you mean it, and that matters. Not for the case, not for anything legal, just, as a fact between us, it matters. She wiped her eye, once, quickly. Then looked back at the park like she was giving herself exactly that much and no more. I'll write the statement, she said. I'll call my attorney today. Thank you, he said. They sat for another few minutes. Not talking about lawyers. Not talking about assets or timelines or anything that had occupied the last 2 months of their lives. She told him she'd picked up 2 corporate wellness accounts. Better money than the studio classes. More interesting work. He told her about the promotion, official, on paper, as of 3 weeks ago. She said that was good. He said it was. She asked about Calvin. He said Calvin was getting married in May. She almost smiled. Calvin found someone patient enough for Calvin? Apparently, he said. She did smile then. Small, real. When they stood to leave, she held out her hand. He shook it. 2 people who had shared a house and a life and a savings account and a porch step that creaked on the left side, shaking hands in a park in December like the adults they were finally both deciding to be. Take care of yourself, he said. You too, she said. She walked toward the east gate. He walked toward the lot where he had parked and did not look back. Not because he was not allowed to, because he did not need to. The statements took 10 days to coordinate. His went through Gloria, 3 pages, factual, precise, establishing what he could verify about Phyllis's role, that she had not been neutral, that her involvement had been active and sustained, but that Renee had exercised independent judgment at every stage and bore primary responsibility for her own choices. He reviewed the draft twice, asked Gloria to adjust 2 phrases that were accurate, but could be read as overstating his certainty. She made the adjustments without comment. That was what he valued most about her. She understood the difference between what a statement said and what it implied, and she cared about both. Renee's statement went through her own attorney. He did not read it. He did not ask to. He had trusted that she would tell the truth on Saturday in the park, and he trusted it still. Bernard's attorney received both statements and submitted them to the court along with Phyllis's own documentation. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon in January, Phyllis's attorney called with the result. The judge had modified the settlement, not eliminated it. Phyllis would repay $80,000 of the original $130,000, a structured repayment over several years, not a lump sum, which her attorney had negotiated as part of the outcome. The statements had established sufficient mitigating context to prevent the full clawback Bernard had sought. $50,000 she kept, $80,000 she owed back. It was not a clean outcome. There was no clean outcome available. But it was not the total devastation that had been possible, and the difference between those 2 things was real, even if it was quieter than either victory or defeat. Phyllis texted him that evening. 8 words. Thank you. I will not waste this. I promise. He read it. Texted back. I know you won't. He believed her. Not because people always keep the promises they make from inside their worst consequences. Because she had sounded, in that coffee shop on Caldwell Street, like someone who had been reduced to something true. And sometimes that reduction is the necessary thing. Sometimes you have to lose the version of yourself that caused the damage before you can become the version that does not. He hoped she made it. He meant that. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in February. He was at his desk when Gloria called at 11:47 a.m. It's done, she said. Okay, he said. How do you feel? He thought about the question. Like, I'm standing somewhere new, he said. And I can see some of it, not all of it yet. That's accurate, she said. That's exactly what it is. He thanked her. She said he would be fine. He said he knew. He put the phone down and looked at the campaign he had been building since January. A new regional initiative, different scope than the last one. More ambitious, in ways his director had said the board was ready for. He looked at it for a moment. Then he kept working. March brought the promotion's official paperwork. Director of Marketing, $118,000 annually. His director shook his hand in the conference room in front of his team and said the kind of things people say in those moments. Deserved, long overdue, the work speaks for itself. He accepted the handshake and the words with the same equanimity he had brought to everything else this year. That evening he wrote in the notebook, "The life you built does not leave just because one part of it did." He had started a new notebook in December. The old one was on the shelf above his desk in the apartment. Not hidden, not displayed. Just present the way significant objects become present when you stop needing to make decisions about them. He still made coffee every morning, ground the beans, heated the water, poured slow, waited 8 minutes. The new apartment had good morning light. He had chosen it partly for that, and partly because it had a kitchen window that faced east and caught the first hour of the day directly. He had developed a habit, in the months since moving in, of standing at that window with the coffee while the light came in and Charlotte assembled itself into another morning. Not thinking about anything specific, just present, just there. He had started walking to work in March when the weather allowed. 40 minutes, down through the neighborhood and into uptown and then the last few blocks to the building. He wrote things down from the walks, not plans or lists, observations. The way the light moved through the buildings on Tryon when the sky was clear. A conversation he had overheard between 2 older women on a bench that had made him think about patience in a way he had not thought about it before. The dog that sat outside the coffee shop on 7th every Thursday morning waiting for its owner. His therapist. He had started seeing someone in January without making an announcement about it. Said the walking and the noticing were healthy. He told her he was not trying to be healthy, he was just walking. She said that was exactly how healthy things happened. He thought that was probably right. Calvin's wedding was the 3rd Saturday in May. Not large, not elaborate. Calvin was not those things and had found a woman, Denise, who was not those things either, which was what made the thing work. 200 people in a garden venue 30 minutes outside Charlotte. String lights and good food and the atmosphere of a man who had located his person and wanted the people he loved to see it. Darius was best man. He had written the speech over several evenings, revised it 4 times, not because he was uncertain about what he wanted to say, but because he was certain, and wanted to make sure the words were actually carrying it, rather than just approximating it. The speech was about showing up, because that was the only subject he knew well enough to speak on from the inside of something real. He talked about what it meant to choose someone on the ordinary days. Not the days that asked something of you. The 6:30 days. The days that did not announce themselves as significant, but turned out, in their accumulation, to be the entire thing. He talked about Calvin. About 19 years of a man who showed up with vending machine sodas and no advice and just sat there because sometimes that was what was needed, and Calvin always knew which kind of night it was. He raised his glass. 200 people raised theirs. Calvin, standing at the front of the garden in a good suit, looked at Darius with the expression of a man who had temporarily run out of words, which was unusual for Calvin, which meant the speech had done exactly what a speech is supposed to do. After dinner, the dancing started, and Darius moved to the edge of the garden the way he sometimes moved to the edge of things, not absent, just taking in the whole room instead of one corner of it. A woman came to stand nearby, not approaching him, not manufacturing a meeting, just also standing at the edge, looking at the same room, holding a glass of something and watching Calvin and Denise dance with the uncomplicated smiles of someone who was genuinely happy for another person with no complicated feelings underneath it. That, the uncomplicated nature of the happiness. He had spent most of the past year around complicated feelings, and this woman's smile was something else entirely. "You're the best man," she said, looking at the dance floor, not at him. "I am," he said. "Good speech," she said. "Thank you." The part about the ordinary days. She paused. "That's the true part." He looked at her now. "It was all true," he said. She glanced over, a look that lasted a moment longer than a glance. "The true part is always the shortest," she said. "But it's the part you remember." He thought about that, about the notebook, about all the long, careful moves of the past 6 months, and about how the center of all of it, the thing that had actually held everything together, was maybe 2 words.
Stay clear.
Or maybe just the 8 minutes of a Monday morning. The shortest part, the part you remember. "Lorraine," she said, and offered her hand. "Darius," he said, and shook it. They stood there a while longer, watching Calvin dance, not filling the silence with anything it did not need, because he was 41 years old, and he had learned this year what it cost to rush the parts that deserved old on their own time. He had learned that patience was not the absence of movement. He had learned that being clear was not the same as being cold. He had learned that you can protect yourself completely and still choose afterward not to let the protection become a wall. He had learned that forgiveness was not something you gave the other person who had hurt you. It was something you gave yourself. Because the rent on anger is paid daily. Because carrying it costs more than people tell you. Because at a certain point the most powerful thing a man can do is put down the weight and walk forward without it. Not because they deserved it, because he did. The garden around him was warm with string lights, and the sound of a good evening doing what good evenings do. He finished his drink, thought about Monday, about the coffee that was waiting to be made, and stayed a little longer, because he was as allowed to. Because this, right here, right now, this ordinary, unremarkable good moment in a garden in May, this was the whole point. Not the settlement, not the recording, not the patient architecture of a plan that had protected him when protection was what was needed. This, being present, showing up, staying 6:30 every day, like his father, like himself, like the man he had always been and had never, not for one day of the hardest year of his life, stopped being. If this story stayed with you, if any part of it landed somewhere real, leave a comment below. Tell me which moment hit you hardest. Was it the park bench, the statements, the speech at the wedding, the 8 minutes every Monday morning? Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting in a car in a driveway right now, engine off, lights off, trying to decide whether to go inside. This one is for them. Subscribe if you want to hear what happens to someone just like that, because the next story is already waiting. And it starts the same way all the best ones do. With a person everyone counted out, who had not finished counting yet.